Calls are growing for President Cyril Ramaphosa to reshuffle his cabinet. This is in the wake of the unrest in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, with a security cluster which seemed powerless to prevent. Health Minister Dr Zweli Mkhize is also embroiled in the digital vibes at tender saga amounting to 150 million rand. To unpack this, we're now joined by Stellenbosch School of Public Leadership Professor Zwelinzima Ndevu to discuss and dissect the issue. Professor Ndevu, very good morning. Trust you are enjoying Stellenbosch today. My first question, I suppose, is for us to look at the 28 ministers and 34 deputy ministers and just how effective have they been in the last couple of years?
Thank you very much, Hugo, and good morning to you and your listeners. I think the reality is that we have a very bloated cabinet. We have 28 ministers who are not really effective, who eats on the fiscus. With the current pandemic and the economic crisis in the country, we really cannot afford 28 ministers. It's compounded by the fact that they are also not effective. And I think it is time for the president to reduce the cabinet to a substantially manageable size.
Now, you talk about manageable, but let's also talk about effective. What sort of numbers would be effective in your view?
In my view, if you look at the trend all over the world, 10 to 15 ministers that are effective, that are highly competent people within their portfolios that are appointed, and we try and coordinate work of government in such a way that ministers talk to each other would help us greatly. It will also reduce on the burden on the fiscus as well. So you would have competency, you will also have less expenditure on the ministers, as we know that is very expensive to maintain this current budget and cabinet size.
Now, one of the growing trends globally, our neighbors, Botswana, Namibia, never mind the rest of Europe, have a lot of young ministers, ministers that are barely in their 30s. So a lot more energetic, relating to the population. The bulk of the population is young people. If the president were to consider a cabinet reshuffle, do you think that young people or younger ministers is the way to go, something that he should look at?
I think it's time now for South Africa to do that. Really, we've got young people who, within the ruling party and other political parties and civil society, who have the courage, who have the drive to save their people. And I think it is high time that we look at that and appoint such people. We are seeing a situation where people retire as cabinet ministers. They are appointed as part of the retirement package. Person who's 60 and over, you're still appointed as a cabinet minister. I think we should move to more younger people. Maybe we are not at a stage where we can appoint people who are 30 and younger, but we could actually appoint people who are competent, who are younger than the current ministers that we have.
Now, some countries will look at technocrats as ministers in specific areas. Now, there have been issues, certainly around the State Security Agency. And in many instances, I saw something on the internet where there was a comparison between the minister who's responsible for state security in the United States and our own State Security Agency minister in terms of their qualifications and experience around state security. Now, is Minister Ayanda Dlodlo qualified to be in this position?
We know that we're told that Minister Dlodlo has been part of the intelligence underground. But as to whether that qualifies one to be a minister of intelligence in a democratic society, in a society that is connected with the global community, is another thing. I think what that particular communication or message that was circulating talk to people that are competent, people that have the requisite skills to be able to execute whatever responsibility they are given to them, and people that are in touch with the reality on the ground in the portfolio that they are assigned to. And that cannot be attributed to the current minister.
Now, obviously, in certain instances, you will hire or you will employ politicians regardless of whether they have any experience in a particular sector. But when we talk about state security, and obviously what's transpired, somebody's got blood on their hands because 300 people have died. Billions of rand worth of infrastructure has been destroyed because somebody failed to act.
I think there should be consequence management. Clearly, as you indicated, somebody slept on the job, failed to act as part of his or her responsibility in that position. And we don't know whether it's the police or the state security, because the ministers also having public sparks, they cannot agree on what really happened. And that is worrisome if you have portfolios that are supposed to defend and protect citizens and the country against internal and foreign attacks, and they seem to not know what they're doing. Then you get worried. I think somebody must take responsibility, and consequence management must be instituted to deal with those issues.
Now, procedurally, what should have happened? State security, I'd like to think, would have established that there was possible looting or a possible insurrection, whatever you would like to call it. If they had that information, how should they have acted? I mean, indeed, if that information was passed on to the police minister's office and sat on, should they have just waited for him to act without some form of encouragement? I mean, we're talking about multiple billions of infrastructure that was destroyed.
I think we firstly have to understand the role of state security is to gather information and then give those agencies of government that will be able to deter any threat or attack or use that information in their daily business. So one would say if they have indeed collected the information and have passed on to the police, and where the police were not acting, wouldn't it have been possible for them to then look at other arms of government, such as metro police in the local government level, to pass that information to those entities so that they can act, especially because they were closer to where the activities were happening in the malls and all sorts of things that were happening with looting. So I think from their end, it is not only for them to pass the information, but they ensure that the information is acted upon. And then for the police, if they indeed receive that information and not acted upon, it talks volumes about the incompetency of the police at senior management level to be able to coordinate and direct processes of this nature.
Now, let's talk about police just a little bit before we wrap up. Now, countless times we've had conversations about how many of our reporters and members of the media were present at the institutions, or certainly at the malls, where looting was occurring, either just before it occurred or when it started. And the police were nowhere to be seen. What does it say about our police force?
I think it paints a very bad picture of our police force. It paints a picture of the police force that is not reactive and not responsive, not proactive, a police force that is not on the ground, ensuring visibility or acting upon illegal activities that are happening. I am as surprised as many South Africans as to why would members of the media be at a particular time or at those events or incidences, and the police are not there. I mean, if that information could reach ordinary members of society, I wonder why or how it could not reach members of the police service, especially in some of the malls. The police station is just across the road from those malls, and it really boggles one's mind. But it talks to incompetency, it talks to people not wanting to take responsibility. It might also talk to lack of capacity within the police service to be able to execute their responsibility. And I think that's something that the president must deal with and look at going forward, especially if he thinks of reshuffling or changing the cabinet, adjusting the cabinet, and look at whether we get an effective police leadership at the political level, and also we look at the defects at the administrative level within the police service. So.
Now, those are two ministries that we've looked at, Professor Ndevu, in which it is clear, certainly from your own assessment, that the individuals at the top or somewhere in that system are incapable of meeting out their mandate. So let's talk about a possible cabinet reshuffle. Is this something that the president should be looking at, number one? Number two, there is a tendency, certainly by the ANC, for redeployment of cadres. So if you fail in this ministry, let's put you in the next one. If we were to reshuffle the cabinet, will that instill some faith that has been lost in the president and the ANC?
I think that in your first point, yes, it is the right time for the president to act. It is the right time for the president to act decisively. We have seen public sparks of ministers. We have seen ministers not agreeing on a position of government that has been presented by the president. So it clearly shows you that there is no coherent, and it is time for the president to act on it. I think the president must not recycle ministers. Those who are not working, those who are dead roots, who have not been effective, must be put in the backbenches in parliament, or must be taken out in the public institutions that they represent the people in, and put fresher bodies, people that are going to be able to take the mandate of the government forward and ensure that they service all the people of South Africa effectively and efficiently. As recycling ministers would erode trust and confidence in the current government, and ultimately the president might be the biggest loser at the end of it.
Professor Zwelinzima Ndevu, thank you kindly for your time this morning. Professor and I are having that conversation on possible cabinet